Have you ever got a contract and then wondered, what the heck am I supposed to be looking at this? Like, what does this thing say? I have no idea, and I don't know what I'm signing and agreeing to. Am I giving my life away? Well, today in this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to review contracts that you have to sign on behalf of your business so you know exactly what you're getting into. Hey there and welcome. I'm Vander, an attorney turned entrepreneur who helps online coaches and service providers legally protect and grow their online businesses using my DIY legal templates and my Ultimate Bundle program. And here each week on YouTube, I share fresh legal tips teaching you how to learn how to legally protect yourself as you grow your online brand. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe right here so you make sure you catch all of my legal tips and videos each week here on YouTube. And of course, ring that bell if you want to make sure you get a notification every time I post a new video. In this video, I'm going to go over the top things that you need to review in any contract that somebody sends you. Honestly, you could probably use these tips even outside of business, but I'm really talking to you today if you're an online business owner and you have to sign contracts on behalf of your business sometimes and you don't really know what you're reading. I'm teaching you exactly what to look for. Okay, the first thing I want you to do whenever you get a contract sent to you that you have to review and sign, I want you to see if you and your business are named correctly. Wherever possible, if you have a LLC or a registered business already, I want you to have your business actually named in the contract instead of you as a person. At the very least, if you are named personally in the top of the contract, like that top paragraph that's at the top of any contract, then I want you to make sure that when you sign that contract, you sign on behalf of your business. What that looks like is if I was signing a contract, I would sign Sam Vander Wielen, or technically Samantha Vander Wielen, and then in parentheses, I'd put on behalf of Sam Vander Wielen LLC to show that I am always doing everything in my business as a owner of my business and on behalf of my business and not as an individual. That's really important if you've ever watched any of my LLC videos before, because we need to make sure that we keep that separation between you as a person and you as a business so that we make sure we keep that personal liability protection intact. The second thing I want you to do is probably the thing that you're already doing, but I just want you to go through and check that all of the details that you remember discussing with this person, probably the biggies that stick out to you are things like price, the dates, maybe if it's like a location, the term of your contract, meaning how long it lasts, when it starts, when it ends. Things like that are really helpful for you to just quickly review and make sure that they're consistent with whatever it is that you talked about. If it's not consistent, if it's not there for whatever reason, then you definitely need to chat with them. The third thing I want you to look for is whether there's an entire agreement clause, because if there's an entire agreement clause in that contract that you're signing, what that means is that that contract actually encapsulates the entire agreement of what you've come to with this other person that you're signing the contract for. And what that means is that if you've had any discussions like on the phone, by text, by email, in any other carrier pigeon, any other form of communication that you think are inconsistent with what you see in the contract, if there's an entire agreement clause in the contract, you need to make sure that what's in the contract is your understanding of what you want to agree to. So that means you can't accept any of that like, oh, I know that the contract says this, but it's totally fine, just sign it anyway. You can't do that if there's an entire agreement clause, because that agreement will be the final word and the only word. The fourth thing I want you to look for is if there's a venue and choice of law clause, because what that will tell you is which state's law, if it's an American contract, applies to that contract, and also where any sort of disputes would have to take place if there was a disagreement between you and whoever you're signing the contract for. So if you're in California, but the venue and choice of law clause says it applies in Florida, that means Florida law will apply to any contract disputes between you and the person you're signing with, and any lawsuits would have to take place in Florida. So that's an important thing for you to know. The fifth thing I want you to look for is whether there's an indemnification clause and who exactly needs to indemnify whom, right? So indemnification is essentially a fancy lawyer legal term for when you have to provide legal protection or defense of another party. What that means is that if there was a disagreement and there was a lawsuit, right, and a third party sued one of you, and there was an indemnification clause saying that you had to provide legal protection for the other person that you're entering into the contract with, that's an important thing to know, right? Because that means if there's a lawsuit from somebody else that that has to do with the two of you guys working together, then that means that there's going to be some legal obligation on your part to provide indemnification for the person you've entered into the contract with. I know it's confusing. I know indemnification is a complicated topic, but I just want you to essentially be aware of whether or not you would owe legal protection to the person you're entering into the contract with. Okay, the sixth thing I definitely want you to check out in any contract that you sign is, generally speaking, what constitutes breach of contract, and also what are the rules and the terms around termination of that contract. Essentially, what I'm getting at is that I want you to be familiar with how you can get out of this contract if something happens, how the other person can get out of this contract if something happens, and what are the ramifications if either one of those situations occur, right? So essentially, it's really important for you to understand, if this person just stops performing, stops doing work for you, it depends on what the contract's for. What are your options? What are you owed? Are you able to go after them? Does that constitute breach of contract? Can you get damages for that? Do you get your money back? It really depends on what kind of contract you're entering into and for what. But generally speaking, I just want you to be reading this contract with it in the back of your mind, all of the worst case scenarios based on the kind of contract that you're signing, of what would happen if things went wrong, both on your end and on their end, right? So that is a little, I think, lawyer trick. It's a very negative lawyer trick, but that is essentially what we're trained to do, is to look for all the what if scenarios in a contract. What if the person stops showing up? What if they stop paying? What if they ghost you? All of that kind of stuff. The seventh thing I want you to look for in any contract that you sign is what happens to the intellectual property that's created as a result of this contract. So if in this contract you two are creating a program together, or you're hiring somebody to design things for you or create a website for you or anything, you want to know who owns the stuff that comes out of this contract, right? Who owns the media, who owns the writing, whatever it is that's coming out of it. You need to know, are you the owner of the stuff that's being written, or is the other person retaining intellectual property rights to the work that's being produced as a result of this contract? Now, it might be totally fine. It's just a thing to know, right? So I'm not telling you necessarily that you should or shouldn't own the intellectual property. That's very dependent on what kind of contract you're signing and what the relationship is like. But in general, it's just good to know going into a contract whether or not you're coming out of it actually owning the intellectual property rights to the thing that's being created. If you don't own the rights to the thing that's being created, then that's going to seriously stifle you, moving forward in terms of being able to use those things in the manner in which you want to use them, because the other person is going to have ownership control of those pieces of content. So just a good thing to know, and something that you can definitely hash out. Last but not least, the eighth thing I want you to look for in any contract that you sign is whether or not it discusses confidentiality or protection of confidential information. So again, depending on whatever you're talking about or what this contract is for, there might be some confidentiality law that applies to you or that applies to them or both of you. It might be a mutual non-disclosure. So it's really important for you to know whether or not there's any non-disclosure information baked in there, or whether there's a confidentiality agreement baked in there. It's really important to know whether you're being held to the same standard as they are and vice versa, and also what constitutes confidential information. So typically a contract will break down what confidential information really means. In some cases, it's just like trade secrets, but in coaching, scenarios, it can mean whatever's discussed in a session. And that's really important for you to know too. Of course, this list of 8 things that you should review doesn't cover every single thing that could be important or really, impactful for you signing a contract. But if you just reviewed these 8 things, this would have you way ahead of the game. So I wanted to give you a solid foundation for reviewing any contract that's sent your way. I actually have a training on this topic inside of my Ultimate Bundle program, which is my signature program that gives people 10 DIY legal templates, like all of the website policies and contracts that people need to run an online coaching business or service providing business, as well as access to 35 on-demand video trainings, including one that's on this very topic, teaching people how to review contracts that you get sent to you. So you can learn more about the Ultimate Bundle by clicking the link in the description, but the absolute best way to both learn more about the Ultimate Bundle and get it through a heavy discount, and promo is through my free legal workshop, 5 Legal Steps to Protect Your Online Business, which you can catch in the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching this week's video. I'll see you next week.